Today we will be watercolor painting the Easter story. For this project, I will be using a piece of watercolor paper. I recommend at least 90 pound. I'm also using a Sharpie and watercolor paint. If you'd like to use a pencil first and then trace with Sharpie, you could totally do that too. I'm starting off by making a line as close to the edge of the paper as I can. This will be a border for my picture. I like to have a border so that I don't necessarily need to paint all the way to the edge of the paper. So I'm just going to try to make it as close to the edge as I can without going off the edge. Next, I want to divide my paper into sections. So I'm going a little bit above the halfway mark so that I can kind of make my paper into thirds. So this is the top third, and I'm just going to make kind of a horizontal line. Doesn't have to be perfectly straight. And then I'm going to do another line down here to make a second third and a third third on my paper. So you can see it's in 3 sections and they're somewhat equal. It's okay if they're not perfect. In the top section, I want to make a mountain or hill on one side of the paper, and it doesn't have to be the left side. You could totally do the right side too. It really does not matter. And on the top of the hill, I'm going to make, of course, the cross that Jesus died on. And I'm trying to make it big enough so it really uses up the full space. And then I'm going to go ahead and make the 2 crosses that the robbers were on either side of Jesus as well. So that the 3 crosses there on the top of the hill. Now in the second section, I also want to make a hill, but I'm going to do it on the opposite side of my first hill. So if you made your hill on the right, make it on the left. I made mine on the left, so I'm going to make my hill on the right, just so that we have a variety here of space. And this is going to be the tomb where Jesus's body was laid. So I'm going to add a big circle for the stone that was in front of the doorway. And then I'm going to add the opening for the tomb right next to the stone. And I'm making it open so that Jesus has already risen. So it's going to tell the story. And I thought because that happened Easter morning that I would go ahead and make the sunrise kind of behind the hill. So I'm going to go ahead and add the sun coming up behind the hill here, and I decided to add some rays coming out of the sun to look like it was shining brightly. So I thought that would be nice. Now for this last section, I want to divide it up into 2, and the bottom is going to be a little bit smaller than the top, so I'm making my line a little lower down. And in this area, I want to squeeze some letters. And in order to do that, I'm going to need to make my letters pretty skinny because I actually want to fit 3 words in here. So the first word is he, and you can see that my H is very skinny and that it touches both the top and the bottom line. So these are capital letters and they should touch the top line and the bottom line. So just like you were writing on handwriting paper, except I don't have that dashed center line, really try to make sure that you write neatly and that your letters touch both the top and bottom. My second word is. So a small word, but I'm also making the letters nice and skinny to make sure that I can fit 3 words in this section. So he is. And then my last word is risen, which is 5 letters. So I really am trying to make sure that my letters are nice and skinny so I can fit all 5 letters in the rest of this space. So I have my R nice and skinny. My I, of course, is nice and skinny. My S touching the top and the bottom lines all the way. I've got my E, also can kind of make it nice and short so that it squeezes into the space, and then I've got enough room for my N. And if you have even a little bit of room left, you could add an exclamation point at the end. But I'm going to stop there. And then at the very bottom, just to kind of think about spring and all of the colors that we usually see this time of year, and to add some fun colors to this picture, I wanted to add some flowers. Usually our altar at church is decorated with flowers too, so I thought it would be nice to add some pretty spring flowers here on the very bottom. Notice that my flowers are also pretty big. I don't want to have teeny tiny things that I'm going to have to paint, so I'm just going to make 5 flowers across the bottom that take up pretty much most of this space to keep it easy for me to paint in later. So I decided to do some flowers in a pattern. You can see I've got a flower, tulip, flower, then tulip, so that it was kind of interesting. But if you wanted to do 5 different flowers or 6 or 7 flowers, that's totally fine too. All right, at this point, I am ready to paint. So I have sped up the video just a little bit when I get to the painting section so you can kind of get the idea. But I'm going to start off by painting the skies first. And I like to kind of get the area wet with water and then fill it in with some color. And that way the water kind of helps my colors mix on my paper. And for the crosses, I wanted to add a little bit of purple into my blue sky, just to kind of give it that feel, a little bit darker feel on Good Friday. And then on Easter morning, of course, I have the sunrise, so I'm doing warmer colors there. I also wanted to do the light inside of the tomb. For the letters, you are actually going to paint in between the letters different colors, and I'm making it so that none of those colors touch. So you can see I started with yellow, and then I will fill in some other colors in each little section. So any section that is like surrounded by Sharpie would be a different color. And you can do a pattern or you can just do random colors. It doesn't really matter. But notice how I'm kind of jumping around my painting because I don't want to paint anything that's next to something that's still wet. So if there's an area that's wet, I don't want to touch it with another color because then they will bleed together. So I'm kind of jumping around my picture here and painting it in and letting sections dry. While my grass here is wet though, I can add some other colors, like maybe a hint of purple or things like that. So you can kind of mix and blend colors. For my colors down here for around the grave, I'm using a little bit of blue and brown. That kind of makes like a nice grayish tint, and you can make it warmer and cooler in places. And then I'm going to add a little bit of green to the top, like maybe there's some grass kind of growing on the top there. But again, you can make it kind of however you would like. I'm adding a little bit of yellow to kind of look like there's some glow happening right around the tomb. And then I will move down to this bottom section and add some more color down here. So maybe some blue in between my yellow and pink to give that kind of a cool vibe. And then I wanted this really light kind of spring green in between my colors. And if you don't have different greens on your watercolor, you could always mix green and yellow, and that would give you a really nice spring green color to do around the flowers. But again, don't do that while the flowers are wet because then the colors will bleed together. So I have to kind of let that dry in between colors before I come in and paint. So again, add whatever colors you would like. And when you are finished, hopefully you have a beautiful Easter story painting. Thanks so much for watching and painting with me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to give me a thumbs up and subscribe down below so that you can join me for future tutorials. Have a good one.